Since James Dean died tragically in a violent car crash on his way to a race in Salinas, California in September of 1955, it has always been taken as fact that the accident was caused by Dean's famously reckless driving. The assumption that Dean's death was entirely self-inflicted, of course, makes a perfect, inevitable romantic conclusion to a life lived in the fast lane. It fits perfectly with his reputation as the misunderstood, tortured bad boy maverick, who would not be boxed into weak societal norms like maximum speeds. But life, as well as death, is rarely so clear-cut. What if there is more to the story than this? What if Dean was not entirely at fault for what happened, but so was the driver of the vehicle into which he collided? The subject, therefore, of our premiere Fireside Chiller is the mystery. Was James Dean killed? On September 30th, 1955, James, who normally went by Jimmy, went for pizza with his dad and uncle at Fairfax and 3rd in West Hollywood. He and 3 associates, one driving with him and the other 2 tailing them, then left LA at about 1:30 p.m. for Salinas. Dean's friend and racing mechanic, Rolf Wutherich, rode with him in Dean's brand new Porsche Spider, christened by him Little Bastard. Just south of Bakersfield at about 3:30 p.m., Dean was pulled over by Highway Patrol on Route 99 and cited for a speeding violation. He was going 65 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. The group then continued to Blackwell's Corner gas station in Kern County, where they stopped to refuel and grab some snacks. There, Jimmy ran into a friend to whom he boasted about his new speeding ticket, and then challenged a separate young man in the parking lot to a race. The man, who was driving a mere Corvette, politely declined. So the crew, led by Jimmy and Rolf, continued west on Route 466, now Route 46, into the setting sun. Jimmy did not yet turn his headlights on. Just outside of the boundary of the town of Shoalane, Little Bastard caught up to a car driving significantly slower than it was. Because the 466 was 2 lanes then, overtaking it meant crossing into the oncoming traffic lane. As Jimmy crossed into the other lane, he was confronted by a Pontiac heading straight at them. By then, parallel with the car he was passing, Jimmy was poised to collide head-on with the Pontiac. In a situation eerily reminiscent of Rebel Without a Cause's game of chicken, the Pontiac swerved off the road last second to avoid a crash. Little Bastard overtook the other car and continued full speed ahead. Now emerging from the Polonia Pass, they approached the Y-shaped intersection where the 466 meets the 41. This stretch of freeway has a distinctively downward gradient sloping westward. In the light gray of the approaching sunset, Little Bastard, chromium in color with no headlights, would have blended in with the landscape as seen by oncoming traffic. There was also very likely a glimmer cast over the Porsche by the setting sun, possibly affecting Jimmy's visibility. At this time, a black and white Ford Custom driven by 23-year-old college student Donald Turnupseed emerged from the opposite direction, heading east and starting a left turn from the 466 onto the 41, crossing over into Jimmy's lane. When Jimmy finally saw the Ford, he told Rolf, "That guy's got to see us. He's got to stop." With so little time to act, Jimmy made the calculated risk to floor the pedal so as to make up for the space he needed to swerve into the opposing lane and around the turning Ford. This decision relied on the calculus that the Ford would continue into its left turn, thereby effectively swapping lanes between drivers. But Turnupseed then made an unexpected, fatal maneuver. He suddenly slowed down, halted the turn, and positioned his car directly in front of Little Bastard. There was not enough time for Jimmy to clear his swerve. The Porsche's driver's side flew into the driver's side of the Ford. The sheer force of the impact hurled Rolf forward several yards into an off-road field, but in the accident, Jimmy's feet became trapped between the clutch and brake pedals, whipping the rest of his body violently over the passenger seat. Jimmy's chest was impaled over the steering wheel, and his neck snapped, which probably killed him instantly. Witnesses say Jimmy breathed very shallowly for a few seconds before passing. Turnupseed told authorities he never saw Dean's Porsche coming. There are plenty of reasons to chalk the collision up to Dean's hyper-risky driving. While his exact speed at the time of the crash is not known, Jimmy was without a doubt going over the speed limit and likely well over. Witness estimates put it in the range of 80 to 100 miles per hour. Moreover, as mentioned, the mimetic color of Little Bastard with the rocky terrain and dusk Cholet sky would have served to blend distinctions between the unlit car and the natural setting. Finally, it can't be overlooked that Dean was a conspicuously reckless driver with no conception or at very least desire to exercise the caution or care he absolutely should have, especially when operating such a flimsy vehicle at such high velocity. But Donald Turnupseed was far from blameless. According to California state law, the driver proceeding straight ahead has the right of way when another driver makes a left-hand turn across their lane. Therefore, the duty of care before committing to his turn belonged to the Ford. The abrupt break in his turn implied Turnupseed only noticed Dean after he began his turn. Dean's attempt to anticipate Turnupseed's completed turn by swerving to his left was in line with standard car racing training. He may well have succeeded in avoiding contact, or at least minimizing it, had Turnupseed in fact continued the turn he started. By stopping in the manner he did, Turnupseed instead positioned his much larger sedan as a physical obstacle on the road directly in front of the accelerating Little Bastard. If he really had not seen Dean Spider speeding until the last second, could the crash have been avoided if rather than slamming on his brake, Turnupseed continued or even accelerated into his turn? Obviously, any errors committed in the heat of the moment would have been irrational, the product of adrenaline and amygdala overriding any reasoned prefrontal thought. Nonetheless, vehicular homicide is real and frequent, and in fact, the Cholet is so infamous for its incidence of it, it has been nicknamed Blood Alley. The inquest held after the accident found the entire fault to belong to Jimmy owing to the speed at which he was traveling. A grand jury declined to press charges on Turnupseed, whom another jury might just as easily have charged with manslaughter. Although he stuck to his story throughout, Turnupseed refused to speak to anyone about the accident for the rest of his life and through his death in 1995. While not an admission of fault, this could imply some unease or unresolved guilt on his part. Regardless of who's to blame for Dean's early death, it was probably inevitable. Just judging from the events of the day of September 30th, a speeding ticket with zero remorse, challenging a stranger to a speeding race at a gas station while en route to another race, and a game of chicken forcing oncoming traffic to catastrophically veer off the road, Dean seemed tragically determined to put himself in the line of fire. The precipitating event leading to his death may have been partly caused by the other driver, perhaps even significantly so. If that was the case, Donald Turnupseed got lucky and evaded justice. It wouldn't be the first or last time something like that happened. But 70 years on, and with no clear forensic accounting of that fatal California sunset, all that could be said with any certainty is James Dean's hand in his own demise was definitive, tragic, and avoidable, and perhaps the most poignant demonstration of his larger-than-life image as America's angel of human angst. What do you mourners think? Was James Dean completely culpable in his death, or could it have been more complicated? If Turnupseed was found to have had a hand in it, do we think James Dean would have been so universally adored as he has been all these years, Or would the more passive hand in his own death have diminished some of the light radiating from his eternal star? Thank you for attending our Fireside Chiller. Please let me know how you enjoyed it in the comment section, as well as other fascinating LA or LA adjacent mysteries you'd like me to explore. Book your Grave Line funeral limousine tour of Los Angeles' dark history today at www.graveline.rip. And above all, remember, you only die once.